is going on, everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. In this week's episode, we will be going over what happened during the conference championship weekend. Then we're going to get right into some of the coaching tracking that we did last week. We're going to re-up on that, and then we're going to get into the Super Bowl 58 preview, gambling prediction, and all of that good stuff. Let's jump right into the first game of Sunday, which was the AFC Championship game. We have obviously the Chiefs versus the Ravens in this one, and I'm going to start right off the bat. What happened to start the game off, I think, set the tone for the entire day for the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Essentially, the Chiefs won the toss and then deferred to the second half, which I think was a bold move, kind of set the tone a little bit at the beginning there, that the Chiefs were confident in the game plan they had drawn up on both sides of the ball. They thought they could stifle the Ravens offense. They thought they could move the ball a little bit on the Ravens defense. And that's how the game kind of ended up going. You get that first possession from the Ravens, and it goes 3 and out, which is just never a good sign at the beginning of a game. It seemed like the Ravens were just a little bit tight coming into the game. They knew there was a lot of pressure on them. I've been saying that about a lot of these home playoff games throughout the playoffs the last 2 years, and especially this year. A lot of home playoff, pressure is one of those things that can really wreck a game for, a team that just doesn't have a ton of experience in playoff type atmospheres. So in this one, I knew it was going to be a factor a little bit too. The Ravens, they already had that stigma of getting sent home a little bit too early in the playoffs, especially Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, that era of Baltimore Ravens football. So they already had the pressure of it already being a home game, the AFC Championship game. The pressure of just not getting past the divisional round too many times in their careers in general. And so that started off the game with a quick 3 and out. And I just knew, man, the pressure was going to mount to an apex at some point. And then as soon as Pat Mahomes and them got the ball, it seemed like they were completely unfazed. They just are completely unflinching in these big moments. Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, just the offensive line, Steve Spagnuolo, everybody really involved has just been there so many different times and played in so many big-time games that at this point nothing really phases them. And they were able to go right down the field, score a touchdown. Travis Kelce scores a touchdown right on Kyle Hamilton, who had a ridiculous game all game. One of the best players on the field that day, for sure. It's unfortunate that obviously he couldn't get the job done by himself there, but all the credit in the world to him and the effort that he gave on Sunday. But yeah, basically right off the rip, you had the Chiefs just really, like I said, they were just so calm and collected and poised in these big time moments that like it never rattles them. The Ravens going into this game, it seemed like through what Greg Olson, the color commentator, had kind of gathered throughout the week talking to the Ravens defense, that one of their strategies was to hit Mahomes, let him know that you can't just get away with running around and scrambling around and just making all kinds of plays here and there. You're going to get hit by this Ravens defense. And that really kind of backfired more than anything, honestly. Like, I get the idea behind it. I get that you want to send a message that, like, we're here to hit. Like, we're here to be physical and hit you whenever it's called for it. But it backfired in a moment where, like, multiple times here you get roughing the passer penalties, and that just really hurts your defense in general. Like, yeah, I know you want to set the tone, but when it's causing personal fouls on the quarterback, who they're going to give calls, especially it's Pat Mahomes, they want to protect him specifically. He is the face of the league right now. He's their new GOAT. He's their new Tom Brady in this era of football. So he's going to get the calls. So you got to be careful with those situations where you're trying to send that message to the quarterback that's such a playmaker that you can't risk giving them more juice on offense whenever they really don't need it, because of how good he is himself and how good Andy Reid is in just constructing an offense. So I think that backfired a little bit, obviously. And on top of all of this, it's Pat Mahomes, man. You're trying to rattle a guy that has just been in all of these big-time games his entire career. This is going to be the 5th time out of 6 years he's going to be in the Super Bowl to start off his career, 6 straight AFC Championship games. Nothing should really rattle this guy. And if you paid attention, or if you watched the quarterback documentary this past summer that came out from Netflix, You saw that he's a dog. He really is. Like, yeah, like he does get up and whine about calls here and there whenever he thinks he got, personally fouled and there's a roughing the passer. If there's a pass interference, he's going to throw his hands up and he's going to try to get the attention of the ref to get a call. But that doesn't make him a soft player. That just makes him more or less honestly smart just to see if they'll throw the flag for him, because he's just got so much pull right now because he's so good. So he's just a guy that's just not going to be rattled by something as simple and as, like, I don't know, just a simple thing like hitting him after the whistle or things of that nature, hitting him up high, which happened in the game where he got smacked in the face. I just think that backfired a little bit, because if anything, that's going to embolden him to want to put the nail in the coffin of a team that thinks they can get away with that. And so the Chiefs really, they didn't really do a whole lot in the second half. The Ravens defense did their job. But the Chiefs did enough in the first half to kind of really put their stamp on the game and say, like, we're here and we're not going anywhere. During the game, I was tweeting about it. I just think this iteration of the Chiefs team, they're like doomsday cockroaches, man. You can nuke them. You can, destroy their wide receiving core and they can't catch anything. You can do all kinds of things. You can hurt their O-line a little bit. You can just, as long as you don't completely destroy like the real nucleus of that team, which is Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Pacheco, and Andy Reid, and then the defense, obviously. Like, as long as you don't mess with the key portions of those two sides of the ball, or those few players on each side of the ball, they're just never going to go away. Like I said, they're cockroaches. They're going to come back every single time, and they're just going to continue to survive. And that's what Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid have figured out. They just figured out how to play ugly football thus far in the season. It was kind of a little bit too late in the season that they figured out that they needed to play this style of football to stay competitive in this season. But they figured out that, like, we're going to run the offense essentially through, Pacheco. Pacheco's going to get a lot of touches, whether that's through the passing game or even just running the ball right at the gut, which he was very good at in this game. Obviously, he got stifled a little bit in the second half there. The Ravens really clamped down on him at that point. But then, obviously it's going to be the onus is going to be on Patrick Mahomes to make plays on third down whenever you can't just run for, 8 yards a clip. So Pat Mahomes, obviously in this game, a lot of big-time third downs, making plays, scrambling around, buying time, plays out of structure, making that one throw, just kind of flipping it out there to Travis Kelce, who made like a diving catch. I mean, he was crazy good in this game again. It's like he was saving himself for the playoffs, because the regular season was just a little bit lackluster considering what we're known to have in Travis Kelce type seasons. So, obviously he's not the same as he was. He has lost a little bit of a step, but man, when it matters the most, he is going to go out there and give it his all. And that was enough to win the game on Sunday. The final score of 70-10 is something you would have never expected between these two juggernauts. Even when, this is a Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid led offense that hasn't scored a whole lot this season because of how the wide receiving core and the weapons have kind of coordinated themselves this season. But the Ravens have been scoring a ton of points. Nobody has done what Pat Mahomes and them did to this Ravens defense all season long. The Ravens defense and the Ravens team in general just were smacking around good quarterback play and good football teams all season long. I mean, they absolutely destroyed the 49ers in the regular season, and then Pat Mahomes comes out and does this, and it's just like he was in control. Like he was like a conductor, just like really, or a composer, just really like controlling the flow of that football game, and they just dragged the Ravens into the mud. And like even this Ravens team that was kind of built to be dragged into the mud, they still couldn't handle it. It was just, the moment was just a little bit too big. The lights were a little bit too bright for the team in general. I thought offensively for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson was a little bit hesitant in the first half. I think he wanted to kind of, like, the stigma of him being like the running quarterback and him not having as much success in the pocket as he probably should have this late into his career, and like a lot of that goes into the system in which he was with Greg Roman for that many years. With Todd Monken this year, they've opened up the passing game, and he's done such a phenomenal job all season long, essentially doing exactly what he's been told to do. But in this game, I think he was so used to, like, I'm going to stick back here. I'm going to wait for somebody to come open. I'm going to create an explosive by just sitting back here in the pocket. And I think that stigma of him being the running quarterback was a disadvantage in this game because I think he wanted to prove that he could stay in the pocket and make plays from there and just outduel Mahomes. But in this type of game, man, against Steve Spagnuolo and that defense and all those athletes on the other side of the ball for the Kansas City Chiefs, you had to like speed up your time clock a little bit there and just get out of the pocket. Like if you don't see that guy, that one or two guys in your progression open in the first like 2 to 3 seconds, like Lamar should have just took off and ran. He really should have, because in the second half, it seems like that's what he was doing. He was speeding his time clock up, saying, all right, look, if these few dudes aren't open, I'm going to just take off and make some plays on my own with my legs and whatnot. And it looked like the offense was operating at a higher level at that point whenever he did start doing that. They got a little bit of momentum there in the second half of doing that. You got the big time Zay Flowers, throw and catch, which then he gets the taunting after, which is just shooting yourself in the foot in that scenario, which they were doing all night long too. That was another thing about the Ravens. They were just shooting themselves in the foot when it came to just, the penalties, like I said, against Mahomes, the like personal fouls, the roughing the passers and stuff of that nature. Then you had the Zay Flowers taunting, which is another penalty that goes against you, which would have put you on like, I think the 4-yard line before that taunting penalty. And then so that could have been an easy, Gus Edwards run in for a touchdown. You have so much more time left, but then you have to go back to the drawing board and milk some more clock by accident because Zay Flowers got, the penalty, of course. He ends up getting the ball again, going in for a score, and reaches across the goal line, gets the ball popped out by L'Jarius Sneed, and it's a touchback. Chiefs get the ball. They milk some more clock. They didn't even go down and score, really. They just were able to start running more of that clock off, which is all they needed to do because the Ravens just could not figure out a way to really be effective on offense. And then you get one more real possession, I should say, from Lamar and the Ravens offense, and he goes down and throws it into triple coverage, just trying to make a play. Like, you just can't make that throw right there. Isaiah Likely tosses up his hand like he's open, but there's 3 guys around him. It's an easy pick in the end zone. That's a touchback. Kansas City Chiefs take over again. So it was just one of those situations where, man, the game plan was not the hottest for the Ravens. Lamar didn't play his greatest game, but I'm not going to pin everything on Lamar. It wasn't all his fault. Like I said, he probably should have, looking back on it, hindsight 2020, he should have just started to take off and get things done with his legs at a certain point there, because it looked like the wide receivers for the Ravens just really couldn't get open that often against this Kansas City secondary, which has been great all season long. We all knew this. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, Mike Edwards, those DBs, Justin Reed, they're all back there playing good ball, and Steve Spagnuolo is calling a great defense right now, and he's got people confused. He really does, and it's just a testament to what he's been able to do and just what a good job he's been doing all season long. But, like I said, the Ravens just did not have it on Sunday. It's unfortunate. I don't like the narrative around Lamar Jackson. Still don't, even though he didn't have a great game. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes certain matchups do not match up well with your team, and that just happens to be Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs for pretty much every team in the league, because he is this era's Brady. They just never die. They can never be just completely killed in a game for the most part. It's impressive stuff what Mahomes and the Chiefs and Andy Reid have done in the first few years of Mahomes' career at this point. I said it last week and I'll say it this week. Unpopular opinion. I don't care. I think Pat Mahomes is the greatest of all time. He does not have to match, to me, Brady in Super Bowls for this thing to be a fact for me. It's just, you're watching it in live action. You really are. Like, you can't tell me watching Patrick Mahomes that he's not the greatest football player you've ever seen. Like, it's beyond like ridiculous if you say that he's just a more talented athlete, or he's not as talented as Tom Brady. He's not like, I know Tom Brady has all the accolades, all the career achievements and whatnot, and he played till he was 100 years old. We don't know if Pat Mahomes is going to do that. His game will probably translate to being able to play that long if he really wants to. But he's just a more physically imposing, athlete in general, and he's like just as smart. He's more athletic. He's got a better arm. It's just, he is the real deal. He is the whole package, and if he gets this Super Bowl, man, he's definitely on track to at least tie Tom Brady at this point. Like, I know there could be, changes coming down the pipeline for the Chiefs and whatnot, but what they're doing, and like the thing with it is, like, when does Andy Reid retire? There can be some questions coming down the pipeline, but I just think he is the best of all time. So that's my spiel on that. Ravens, I think they'll be back. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I think Lamar Jackson, that offense, will get better in year 2 under Todd Monken. I really do think so, even though Todd did not have the greatest game plan going here. Just sometimes the game script throws you completely off. The defense, what they're throwing at you, throws you completely off of your initial game plan. And so sometimes you got to adjust, and that's just a learning curve for a guy that's in the NFL for the first time in a while. After coming back from the college ranks. So it just is what it is. Once he learns his, players and his personnel a little bit better, he'll realize what he needs to do in some of those certain situations, and what to tell your quarterback in certain situations as well. So, like I said, I think as long as they have Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, I think that the Ravens will stick around for a very long time. It's going to be unfortunate if Mike McDonald does go elsewhere. That defense may not be as good. He was a evil genius on that side of the ball all season long. Really, like I said, held the Chiefs in check in the second half, but the Ravens offense just didn't come to play really. So, it's just one of those things where, as an Eagles fan, I've been scarred as of last year when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, didn't get the job done, did not capitalize when they could have, and Jonathan Gannon went out the window and Shane Steichen went out the window, both getting head coaching gigs, and the offense and the defense were never the same after that. So it's a big deal losing coordinators after having such a good squad 1 year to the next. It's never the same. You always say, oh, they'll be back, they're so good, blah, 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 but you just never know. Like, you just, key in point, just the Eagles from last year to this year. It's as quick. It can happen as quickly or as just not as quick as you would expect. I mean, you don't really know what's going to happen in these situations. And that's going to rear its ugly head in the next game we talk about as well, in the Lions versus the 49ers, the NFC Championship game. In this matchup, man, I was going crazy. I loved every second of the first half. I was definitely hating on the 49ers, did not want the 49ers to win this game. I was loving every second of the Lions winning the game. I obviously bet Lions plus 7.5 and 7.5 actually. And man, they had them. They literally they had them in the first half, as what's his face said, the freaking tight end, whatever his name is. George Kittle. Why did I forget George Kittle's name? But anyways, that's what he said in the post game press conference thing or whatever. The trophy initiation, but. Anyways, man, the Lions really did a great job in the first half of this game. They came out swinging. They were throwing haymakers at the 49ers. The 49ers were just distraught. They didn't know what had hit them. The Lions were moving the ball at will. They were crushing the middle of the field with their playmakers like Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jahmyr Gibbs was having a good day at the office. David Montgomery was having a very good day at the office in the first half. And man, they went up 24-7 quickly in that first half. Kyle Shanahan, the clips of him on the sideline, he looked like he was dumbfounded. He had no idea what just hit him. Steve Wilkes didn't have any answers. They were stuck in in a defensive set that they thought was going to work in this game, and it just never did. Ben Johnson was pitching a no-hitter in the first half, essentially. They were just scoring at will for the most part. And then the second half kind of happened, and San Fran gets the ball in the second half. First possession, goes down there, kicks a field goal, and it's like, okay, they got a little bit of life here, it seems like. And then Detroit goes down. They're in the enemy's territory. It's fourth down. Dan Campbell takes the gamble just like he does pretty much every other game this season, and he goes for it. They pass the ball. They get a little bit of pressure on Jared Goff, which is like his one Achilles heel. Like if you pressure Jared Goff, he does tend to crap his pants a little bit and freak out and gets off his mechanics a little bit. He can make some errant throws here and there if you get some pressure on him, and that's what happened in this instant. They got a little bit of pressure. He had to step up in the pocket and make a throw a little bit on the move, and he threw it a little bit inaccurately to Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds probably should have hauled the pass in, but he drops it. there goes all of your momentum as the Lions, who are up by a ton of points. At that point, I think it was 24-10. Then, of course, the 49ers at that point, man, they just got a fourth down stop. They're like, oh, wow, we just got points, then we got a fourth down stop. The momentum has now shifted. We are back. We have a chance now that we are only 2 scores away here. Let's go down and get us a touchdown. And that's when you had the craziest, fluky, most ridiculous, NFC Championship game play of all time, where Brock Purdy throws a pass straight down the middle of the field. Vildor is right there for the interception. He's like on his heels. He puts his hands up. The ball goes right through, like an inch through both of his hands, hits him in the face mask, flies up in the air. Brandon Ayuk dives essentially and catches the ball with one hand and falls on like the 2 or 3 yard line. And then, the San Francisco 49ers punch it in from there. And from that point on, essentially, it seemed like the ball started rolling, like the snowball effect. It was rolling down that hill, and the Lions didn't have an answer for how to stop it at that point. San Fran just got enough confidence in them to say, all right, we can make this a game. We can make this happen. We can win this football game. And then from then on, I think the Lions, man, they just couldn't really, I don't know, just Dan Campbell makes the other decision later on of trying to just, instead of tying the game with a field goal at the end there, he goes for it again to try to win the game. And it's back-to-back fourth down situations where you had an option to kick a field goal. And I'm just of the opinion, like, I understand the aggressiveness. That's what got the Detroit Lions to the NFC Championship game in the first place. Otherwise, they would have probably never got there, because the defense was their weakest link. The secondary, which got exposed in the second half of the football game against the 49ers and in a lot of games this season, it was just weak. It was weak. So I understand Dan Campbell's aggressiveness and saying we need to kind of like put these games away. We need to be on attack mode because we want to have our best unit on the field at the end of the day, and that was their offense. Like no two ways about it, really. Their offense was their strongest unit for sure. But the thing is, man, in that game script, when you're up by 14, you can make it up by 17. 3-possession game at that point by just kicking a field goal. And of course there is, the ifs, ands, and buts if Michael Badgley does make or miss the field goals. But they seem to be makeable. I know he was on a practice squad. He was not their original kicker for this season. He had to come in because I think Riley Patterson, their original kicker, was bad. But that's roster construction. That's stuff that you got to work on, throughout the offseason to find out your special teams, get them honed in for the long run. But so Michael Badgley, he was on practice squad at some point earlier this season. They had to pick him up because they needed a more reliable kicker, but they still didn't trust him, obviously, in these types of situations. And on top of that, Dan Campbell just loves to be aggressive almost to no end. And so in these situations, man, you go up by 17 there. And even though they went down and they did kick a field goal and gave themselves a little bit of life themselves on offense, if you kick a field goal there, that momentum just kind of dies right there. But whenever you go for a fourth down, you let them, or you get that stop by the 49ers defense, that gives their team so much more life. It's just unnecessary momentum that was given to them by the Detroit Lions, and I think it was just self-inflicting at that point. I think in a third quarter with time dwindling, you just go down there and you kick a field goal, and at that point in the game, it's so late in the game, and like you've already got such a lead that at that point you can kind of afford to trade field goals for touchdowns, because you've built yourself enough of a cushion to afford to do that, and in the process milk the clock and just essentially get the game to be over with, just essentially in the game in that fashion. Just if you have to just continue to trade field goals at that point, you've built yourself a cushion. The 49ers have to be perfect going down the stretch in order for them to get back in the game if you keep kicking the field goals. And so I think that's where Dan Campbell kind of shot himself in the foot there and didn't really give his Lions a chance to really win the game at the end of the day. Like, I know you can't vilify Dan Campbell for continuing to do what his thing is. Like, it's staying aggressive, being aggressive. But it does at a certain point hurt your football team situationally in very small portions of context. You have to change up and throw a change up, in general, whenever you keep throwing, fastball, which is just going for it on fourth down, being aggressive at every turn, throwing haymakers on offense. Like, at some point you have to throw a changeup just to like throw off the opposing player or defenders or whoever it may be on the opposite side. So I just think Dan Campbell and the fourth down thing, it just got to be too big of a deal, and he just bought into it a little bit too hard, just thought about it too hard, and I think it came back to bite him in this situation, and it just, like I said, it gave the 49ers enough momentum for them to come back. Brock Purdy made some plays in there with his legs. Got to give him credit for that. Did not have a great game once again. So that's 2 games in a row that Brock Purdy hasn't had a great game. 2 games in a row that San Francisco really hasn't had a full game that you can, hang your hat on and say, look, they played dominant football in both these games. Really, they should have lost to the Packers and the Lions in back-to-back weeks here. So, I mean, luck has been on their side, especially with the helmet doink. I guess that's what I'm going to call it, moving forward. You have the double doink in Chicago against the Eagles. You have the helmet doink here in the NFC Championship game, Lions versus 49ers. So 49ers have gotten some nice luck in this playoff run here, and we'll see if it can continue against the Chiefs. I don't think so, but I guess we'll see moving forward. But yeah, San Francisco gets the job done. I thought they were the better team pretty much no matter what. I just thought the Lions just had a better game and a better game plan at the beginning of this game, and I think Dan Campbell just kind of screwed it away at the end there. So, like I said, I think San Francisco is probably the better of the 2 teams. The Lions had their number, obviously, through like 3 quarters in this one, or like 2.5 quarters, I should say. And then the 49ers just turned it on, and they exerted their kind of dominance on the offensive side. Once they get rolling and once they get confidence, man, that 49ers offense is tough to stop. But we'll see if their luck continues and see if Brock Purdy can get away with trying to throw like 2 or 3 interceptions a game. I don't really see it happening, like I said, but let's get right into some of the coaching tracker. That's pretty much all we got for the championship game recaps. We have obviously Chiefs and 49ers in the Super Bowl, as everybody should know. But yeah, let's talk about some of these coaching hires and things of that nature. Head coaching, offensive coordinators, stuff like that. There's been a lot of movement since the last time that we spoke on this podcast. So let me go through the vacancies. There's only 2 left. We have the Seahawks and the Commanders, and it looks like 2 of the coordinators that will be or that were coaching on this past championship Sunday will be getting head coaching interviews at the very least for 2 of these teams. It looks like Ben Johnson will be interviewing for the Commanders, or I think maybe he already has, to be honest with you. But I would be surprised if Ben Johnson does not take over and will be the Commanders head coach. Personally, as an Eagles fan, I do not want him in the division. I think he's a great offensive mind. I think he did a ridiculously good job with Jared Goff, getting him, kind of just to his maximum kind of pinnacle of talent. I think he has, squeezed all the juice he can out of a Jared Goff at this point in time. I think that's as good as Jared Goff's ever going to get is what he's looked like in this playoff run for the Detroit Lions this year. It's going to be scary for the Lions moving forward if Ben Johnson is no longer their offensive coordinator, because I don't know if they can replicate what he's been able to do there as an offensive coordinator. And this could be like one of those situations where we look back and say, man, that was a Lions chance and they completely blew it. And they shot themselves in the foot and they never, ever got close again. And so I feel bad for Detroit Lions fans out there that had to go through that, but I think Ben Johnson is going to take the job in Washington, D.C., and I do not like that as an Eagles fan. Like I said, I think he's really good at his job, and I think the weapons that they have there at their disposal in Washington are great between Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson and the running back situation there. I think they have good players on offense. And then they also have the number 2 overall pick, who they're probably going to be able to take Drake May or whoever they want other than Caleb Williams, who will go number 1 to the Chicago Bears. You can mark that in your calendars. But yeah, the next vacancy, like I said, is the Seahawks. And they are interviewing or have interviewed Mike McDonald. I think they're in the process of getting to do that. And this is another situation where it's like, the Ravens had a great year. The defense was playing out of its mind. He is like an evil genius doing crazy things, using his players in very interesting ways. And I think the Seahawks would be dumb to let him go in for an interview and let him leave the building. I think they will give him a opportunity to be the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks, and I think that would be a great hire for them. They already know what it's like to have a defensive-minded head coach in there. Pete Carroll was there for however many years, and he did a great job there. He got a Super Bowl, of course. Almost had two. That was unfortunate, but I think Mike Macdonald could be the guy that brings them into this next era of Seattle Seahawks football, and I think they have some playmakers on the defense that he's going to want to use. I just think about the way he's been able to use, Kyle Hamilton and how good he is. It just makes you think about him using Devin Witherspoon. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. He was in his rookie year. He's had some injury luck, or some bad injury luck, I should say. And I think Mike Macdonald will probably be there. I thought all along that Dan Quinn was going to be the guy there in Seattle. He still could be. He still could be in the running. I just don't know for sure. But like I said, I just think they'd be dumb to let Mike Macdonald out of the building at this point. So I fully expect those two guys to be the hires for those two vacancies there. But let's talk about who has taken head coaching jobs as well. The Panthers did finally find themselves a coach, probably a little bit too early, maybe a year early on Dave Canales, but they have hired him as their head coach. They probably had to, considering the situation that they've kind of put themselves in with the owner and David Tepper and the bad juju that's surrounding that franchise right now, that organization in general. So Dave Canales, coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, offensive coordinator there, where he made Baker Mayfield look good again. I mean, he basically just exacerbated all of his strengths. I mean, he really did a very good job of getting the ball out of his hands quickly, making him make quick decisions, putting his playmakers in position to be open, and letting Baker just grip it and rip it. And I think that's a good thing moving forward in the mold of Bryce Young is there in Carolina, and he's the same type quarterback, if you will, like smaller guy. Kind of needs to probably be a guy that gets the ball out of his hands quickly, easier reads, get the guys open on offense, because he was a former wide receivers coach, I think, for the Seahawks under Pete Carroll for a while there. So I think he had a pretty good track record of scheming guys open and things of that nature. So I think that Dave Canales has a chance to be a very good head coach, to be honest with you. And I think he's going to probably get the best out of Bryce Young. We'll see what that actually means going forward. But I don't think you could have got a better hire at this point. So Panthers hired Dave Canales. Now, the Chargers also hired themselves a head coach, and they got Jim Harbaugh. This was like the guy that they were linked to all off season. I was not just the biggest proponent of Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL, considering I just don't know if he's more geared towards molding and shaping younger cats in the college than he is controlling a room full of grown men again. But obviously his track record in the NFL was very good. So I understand, these organizations saying, look at his track record. Look what he did with Andrew Luck at Stanford. Look what he did with Alex Smith, and look what he did with Colin Kaepernick. His record is great when it comes to win-losses. So I understand the whole hype. I understand all of it. So it is what it is. Chargers will have a new head coach. It is Jim Harbaugh, and I do look forward to seeing what he can bring out of Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has gotten dealt some nasty hands, if you will, when it comes to just bad injury luck, and to him, to his O linemen, to his wide receiving core, to the defense, to his head coach being kind of an idiot, and Brandon Staley. I'm not going to say Brandon Staley's a bad coach. I think he's a good defensive mind. I think he's going to be a good DC again. I think he's going to get another job. But I just think as that head coach, he was way over his skis. And I just think Justin Herbert's gotten a bad shake of it thus far since he's been in the league. And I think Jim Harbaugh will probably get the best out of him. I think he can whip him into shape and just say, look, man, we're going to get you in a position to win here. And I think it's going to be a good thing for Justin Herbert moving forward. Next one, Falcons hire Raheem Morris. who actually interim head coach for them after the firing of Dan Quinn. I think that was in 2020. He was also the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a couple seasons there. That was his first head coaching gig a while back. He was super young. He was like in his mid-30s, which was like at that time period, that was like the first time they've ever, like in the league, anybody's hired anybody that young. So it was like one of those situations where I think he was just a little bit over, his skis in that situation. And I think he's learned a lot along the way. He obviously he's a track record of getting more out of less from pretty much every stop he's been at whenever he's coaching. I mean, he's coached all over the football field from defense to offense. So he knows every aspect of the game. I think he's going to do a great job in Atlanta. And I think as long as they get themselves a quarterback, which, I mean, if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, I'm calling up Chicago and saying, hey, what do you want for Justin Fields? I know you're going to take Caleb Williams, the one overall pick. What do you want for Justin Fields? I think if Justin Fields is in Atlanta next year with Raheem Morris, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, those guys, I think that Falcons team can easily win the NFC South. I say easily like the NFC South isn't just a complete jumbled up mess almost every season, but I really think they could have a really good season if they can get like a nice little nucleus going there with a real quarterback instead of Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke or whatever combination they throw out there. I just think that they need a QB that they can kind of rely on and build a system around, and then utilize their playmakers the way they should have been used under Arthur Smith. So that's pretty much it for head coaching stuff like that. Let me get to some coordinator stuff that we've seen, some big names out there. Obviously, the Eagles have been making a lot of moves. I said last week, it looked like Nick Sirianni was going to keep his job. He clearly has. He is still the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, but they have essentially wiped the offensive coordinating and defensive coordinating jobs out of the way. And so they have picked up officially Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator and Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. So you have two guys who have a lot of experience, obviously, in both of their spots. Vic Fangio, that situation was a little weird. It was like right before the press conference that the Eagles were supposed to have with Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman on last Wednesday. They had a little bit of a delay. They said they were like in a meeting that was running late. It was like really like an ominous situation. And then it comes out during the press conference that Vic Fangio and the Dolphins have mutually parted ways, which is just a weird thing to happen whenever the Dolphins had a good season. Vic Fangio did a great job there in Miami as the defensive coordinator. You just don't really see that very often. And then like very short, like basically in the same tweet that Adam Schefter put out there that they mutually parted ways, he said, look to see the Philadelphia Eagles jumping on the opportunity to hire Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. And then that happened, of course, and that was a shock to many people. He apparently just wanted to be closer to family, which he has a family in Pennsylvania, right on the outskirts of Philly. He's a big Phillies baseball fan, and so like that's another thing that was drawing him back to the area. He was obviously supposed to take over for the defensive coordinator job last year, but Jonathan Gannon kind of screwed that situation up with his declaration after the NFC Championship game that he was going to come back, and then after the loss to the Super Bowl, he knew he couldn't come back because of the backlash he was getting. So then he went ahead and took the Arizona Cardinals job. And that just kind of screwed us because at that point, Vic Fangio had been like, oh, looks like Jonathan Gannon's not leaving. I'm going to go ahead and commit to being the head coach or the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. So that whole situation is crazy. It's just crazy how like cyclical and full circle this whole thing has come now that Vic Fangio is back with the Philadelphia Eagles and he is taking over for the defensive coordinator job. I think they just needed another adult in the room at this point. I think he's just got so much experience. There's a big difference between running the Fangio type scheme, as a rando, and then the actual guy that came up with what we call the Fangio scheme in the NFL when it comes to defensive-minded football. So I think he's going to do a great job. I hope he does, of course. I think he'll probably get the best out of the players there. We shall see. And then on the offensive side of the ball, we hired Kellen Moore, which I'm a fan of. I think he was probably the best option out there other than probably Eric Bieniemy. I don't know if Eric Bieniemy is even going to I don't know if he – if they would have reached out to Eric Bieniemy, I wonder if he would have said, like, yeah, I would come in for an interview. But I don't know if they ever even reached out, which is kind of an odd thing. I don't know if it's – they just wanted to – get in a little bit different ideas than what they had. Obviously, he's from the Andy Reid tree and stuff of that nature. I don't know if they just wanted to go in the opposite direction of that for whatever reason or whatever. But either way, Kellen Moore, probably one of the better options on the market at this point. He was obviously the offensive coordinator last year for the Chargers, which they just did not have a great season. I don't think you can super blame Kellen Moore. You can't really blame Justin Herbert. Brandon Staley, that the head coaching job he did was a disaster. So there was a lot of turmoil going on there. There's a lot of injuries to the offensive side of the ball, a lot of offensive line injuries. Obviously, Mike Williams tears his ACL. Keenan Allen misses a ton of games with hamstring injury. Josh Palmer misses time. Austin Eckler misses time. Pretty much their entire starting offense missed a ton of time. Justin Herbert missed multiple games with his fingers. He had to end the season on IR. So a lot of stuff going on there. Kellen Moore got dealt a little bit of a bad hand when it came to bad injury luck once again, and just he did a good job when he was with the Cowboys for those years with Dak Prescott and under Mike McCarthy. But Mike McCarthy wanted to change the philosophy of their offensive football team a little bit this year. So he essentially said, I want to take over play calling. So that means, Kellen Moore wasn't going to just take a demotion. He was going to go elsewhere and get another OC job, which is what he did. Just didn't work out there in LA. I think he's going to bring in some fresh ideas. He uses a ton of motion. I think they were 8th in the league in motion last year with the Los Angeles Chargers. The Eagles were 32nd in the league, so they didn't do any of it pretty much at all. I think he's going to bring, like I said, that motion. He's going to bring a little bit more under center stuff for Jalen Hurts to operate within. I think all of this is going to be great for the Eagles offense. I think the way you see him used, the way he used Keenan Allen, the way he used CeeDee Lamb in the past, I think he can use Devontae Smith in those exact same type of ways, and he should be utilized that way. I think the Eagles should probably go ahead and give him an extension this offseason before he has a career year and a contract year, because then the price tag just goes way up for Devontae Smith. I think they need to go ahead and get in front of that one. But yeah, I think he's going to put our weapons and Jalen Hurts in a position to win, unlike what was happening at the end of the season last year, where the game plan, the play design, the play calling, all of it got super stale. And that's exactly the wording that Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman used in the press conference on Wednesday was, offense got stale. We need some fresh new ideas. And they hired Kellen Moore to do that job for them. Next one, Joe Brady is going to be sticking around as the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, who did a pretty good job there in replacement of Ken Dorsey midseason there for the Buffalo Bills. As soon as they made that changeover, they went on that run. Obviously, got the 2 seed in the AFC. Obviously, their season ended in the divisional round against the Chiefs again, but I think he did a valiant job. I think with an off season of his actual offense, they will probably be a little bit more honed in on it and probably be even better. So we'll see what happens there. But Joe Brady's going to stick around in Buffalo. The Bears, they are going to hire Shane Waldron. He was the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks the last few years when Geno Smith kind of had his resurgence. So he's clearly been a guy that can mold and really help quarterbacks out. He designed a pretty good offense there in Seattle. He was essentially the head coach of the offense because Pete Carroll was the guy on defense for the most part. So I think he did a great job in Seattle for the most part. They had some hiccups and some up and downs, but I think he's a good offensive coordinator. He's from the Sean McVay tree. So he's going with the Bears. He's probably going to be coaching Caleb Williams next season. So I think that's a good start. If you put Caleb Williams in a Sean McVay type system there in Chicago, I think that's probably one of the better cases, better scenarios that, Caleb Williams could walk into in the NFL. And then we also have the Browns hired Ken Dorsey to be their offensive coordinator as well. So the guy that, the Buffalo Bills fired midseason to replace, Joe Brady with, or to put Joe Brady in there for him, they have hired, the Browns have hired Ken Dorsey now to be their offensive coordinator, which is a very interesting hire. We'll see how that goes. A lot of questions for the Browns moving forward when it comes to quarterbacking, because you have Deshaun Watson, he's going to be healthy again. Joe Flacco played better than him and DTR pretty much combined last season. So it's just a weird situation for the Browns. We'll see how that works out in the offseason. That pretty much wraps it up for the coaching tracking portion here. Let's go ahead and move into Super Bowl 58 preview and gambling prediction. I'm going to go ahead and lay this out here just like this, very simply. Chiefs plus 2.5 versus the 49ers. The fact that the Chiefs are underdogs in this game is mind-boggling. I don't understand it whatsoever. We have watched now 2 weeks in a row where the 49ers have essentially gotten outplayed, and Brock Purdy has looked like just an average Joe out there, and the 49ers have just found a way to win at the end of the game. I just think they've gotten outplayed, like I said, 2 weeks in a row, and I don't think, like, if Mahomes and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo can do that to the Ravens team, who probably have the best roster in all of football, we're probably still the better team in general in like this season. Like, I think the Ravens were probably the best team. It was just they ran into the wrong team at the wrong time. If the Chiefs can do that to this Ravens team that also just destroyed the 49ers the other day, I say the other day, I mean, it was a couple weeks ago, obviously, before the playoffs started, but one of the late season games in the regular season. I just don't see how you can bet against Patrick Mahomes these last few weeks. So, like, I bet against him this past week. I thought the Ravens were just a better team. I thought the magic of Mahomes and Reed were going to kind of come to a halt here because of, the struggles of the offense, and, the receivers can't catch the ball and blah, blah, blah. But the Chiefs, man, they changed up their offense. They said, Patrick Mahomes calls his number on his own sometimes too and just scrambles. But if your name's not Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, you're not going to get the ball. Essentially, they're going to those three guys. They trust those three guys. They trust Pat Mahomes' scrambling ability and his legs to get themselves out of bad situations. And they're just getting the job done. And Steve Spagnuolo is making life so difficult for every opposing quarterback right now. And Brock Purdy looked very pedestrian against the Lions defense and the Packers defense, which neither one of those are good units. The Kansas City Chiefs defense is one of the better units in all of football. Obviously, they were top 5. I think if I'm not mistaken, they're number 4 or number 5 in the league in total yards allowed. And so I just think that the Chiefs defense is really going to get after Brock Purdy. It stinks that Charles Omenihu tore his ACL in that game against the Ravens. He had a big strip sack in that game against Lamar Jackson, but I just think Chris Jones is going to destroy the offensive line of the 49ers. Who they have some weak spots. McKivick is not that great on the right-hand side there. Some of their O-line or inner O-line play, their guard play is not the greatest in the world. So I think they have weaknesses. I think Chris Jones and that defensive line are going to blow things up, and I think the back 7 is going to be all over the place on Brock Purdy and their middle of the field attack for the most part. I think the thing you have to do is just make Brock Purdy throw outside the numbers, throw outside the hashes, make him throw down the field, and see if he can connect there. If you muddy the situation and his vision in the middle of the field, I think things get very hairy for him, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs will win this game by plenty if that's the case. And Pat Mahomes will get his 3rd Super Bowl. In 6 years or whatever, or 5 years. It's just crazy stuff. If Pat Mahomes wins this Super Bowl, it's going to be the discourse is going to be wild. Obviously, the discourse about Brock Purdy, depending on the way he looks in this game, is going to be wild. So it's going to be an awesome Super Bowl. I can't wait. I am 100% pulling for the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes to get the job done because I can't stand an off season of the 49ers and their 40 whiners fans out there that just talk smack all off season long, saying that the Eagles would have never beat them if they had Brock Purdy healthy. But I don't care, dude. He looked like trash in the first half, and they just had the luckiest comeback of all time against the Lions. You had the helmet doink to help you out in that one. You had Dan Campbell shooting himself in the foot 2 different times for you to come back and win that game. So I don't want to hear it. I hope the Chiefs win this game. That's pretty much it for this episode. I appreciate everybody listening. Follow on all the socials that we're on. Stay in touch and keep in tune with all the socials when I post my gambling predictions by the end of the week here. I pretty much laid it out there. My opinion is not going to change, essentially, by the end of the week on this one. This one's locked in. Chiefs plus whatever. If they continue to be underdogs, which I don't understand, maybe I'm just getting fooled here by Vegas and the lines, but I don't see how the Chiefs can even be an underdog in this game at all, and so they are right now. So I would pound that if you can. If you got a little bit of extra dough laying around, smack that, and I will talk to you guys after the Super Bowl. We'll see you next week.